lot of times we think in terms of tools, and tools come from and return to the toolbox. What I'd like to explore right now is more akin to a Swiss watch with a fine, intricate, delicate movement, but is incredibly powerful. And it's a really great tool for those tough, tricky conflicts with other people. Conflicts that are so hard that we take the low road rather than the high road. And we make the choice to dishonor other people. This mechanism is a flowchart. So let's start with step one. Cause. Most conflict has an origin story. There's a moment of transgression, a moment of offense, a moment of deception or betrayal or something that we can point to and put our finger on in the history of a relationship and say, this right here, that's the scene in the movie where everything went off track. It could be, perhaps, not so problematic in the particulate, but in the aggregate, over time, maybe, the relationship gets off track. Nevertheless, there's a precipitating event, a stimulus, or a series of stimuli that have brought us to this precipice in relationship with another person. It's also important to remember that we all have this personal software, right? So we're all intaking observations of other people. In particular, let's say the antagonist or our nemesis. And we're processing their behavior through our personal software or our cultural software. So personal software are beliefs and biases that are generally formed through family values or a faith or an ideology, things that are handed down and that we experience firsthand. And then cultural software are those things that are just broader, right? I'm part of a community, and most of us in that community behave in this particular way. So it could be that in conflict, we're interacting with someone that just feels so alien, so foreign. Their priorities are so different than ours. How in the world can anybody in his or her right mind think this is a good thing to do, etc.? Nevertheless, we have personal software, cultural software, and we have beliefs and biases that are reciprocating. They inform what we choose from that feed, and they inform what we focus on next. It's just important to remember that loop. Because part of the cultural software and the personal software is also a perspective of morality. There is a sense that we all have of what is the moral thing to do in the moment or in the situation at hand. And to go one step further than conscience, that voice niggling about the moral thing to do, there is also conviction. Conviction is our sense of what it is to honor another person. And we feel convicted in most cases, in more cases than not, to treat most people honorably. And if we do that, and that's the choice that we make in a particular conflict, it flings us into this green box and we're out of the watch. But if we choose to defy our conviction and to dishonor another person in conflict, we're making a choice. And one of the ways that we sustain that choice, because it's a really outrageous choice to dishonor another person, is through camouflage. So we can only dishonor someone else in perpetuity through remaining camouflaged, because otherwise we would be an outcast. Camouflage is possible in particular by first starting to think of our antagonist not as a person, but as a thing or an object. This is the process of depersonalization. I'll speak to it in another time when we talk about sociocentrism. But when we depersonalize other people, it is gobsmacking the evil that one can do to another when he or she views that person not as a person. Again, as a thing or an object, or a virus, or a rat, or subhuman, or a monster, or whatever, right? Beyond depersonalizing another person, another way that we continue to facilitate our own camouflage is by inflating others' faults and our own virtuousness. Third is through over-amplifying the significance of things that will immediately validate my choice in the conflict and that I believe personally will also ultimately vindicate me. Camouflage has a subroutine, too, of corroboration, validation, and vindication. So corroboration is the pursuit of selecting data that we each believe as an individual will support us in this conflict. And we deny or marginalize or minimize evidence to the contrary, evidence that might, in fact, make us look like the bad guy. So we're looking for validation. Everywhere we turn, we're trying to find validation that mounts evidence against our antagonist. We're looking for vindication. We're certain that in time we'll be exonerated by those who malign me and simply don't understand, right? The sad thing about camouflage behavior over time is that often it becomes our reputation. It becomes characteristic of us. Observers of the conflict will think less of us because they're thinking of us through the lens, the way that we've treated this other thing or object over time. And the really sad thing is step 7, where that dishonorable behavior, that self-deception, our sense of righteousness in the conflict, and the other person being scum, that we actually become a virus of that behavior, that we carry that behavior forward into relationships with new people, people in our lives that we have not dealt with yet. But how do we treat them? We might treat them dishonorably as we did the people in the past because it has become so characteristic to treat other people as things and as objects. And then lastly, the nail in the coffin in the process of self-deception and treating other people dishonorably is the delicate dance we find ourselves in with the antagonist over time, the bad guy or gal in the conflict, the person on the other side of my table, if you will. And this is the step of collusion. This is where we each operate with a secret or increasingly unconscious yet reciprocating excuse to defraud each other. We invite reinforcing mistreatment, corroboration, validation, and vindication over time. And we, sometimes unwittingly, collude in giving each other a reason to remain in deadlock. I find in coaching folks and in mentors who have mentored me over time that in conflict, where an individual cannot change another person's mind, let's say another person's perspective of your antagonist, that plan B is to change the way that that person views the antagonist. So if I can't get you to agree with me, at least I'm going to plant a seed of doubt that the other person deserves to be treated honorably. Again, an intricate, delicate mechanism, a heady one at the very least. But I hope that upon reflection, you'll find yourself more often than not following that conscience, that inner advocate that we each have for morality, and doing those things about which we feel convicted, the right things, often being the hardest things, which is to say, treating people always as people, and honorably, never dishonorably.